The entire Vaidika Shastra stems only from the Veda. So the Veda, there is only one Veda. So the entire Vedic wisdom is Veda, and it comes from the root Vid, that is to know. And it is a means of communication. So communication can be either in poetry, then it is called as Ruk. It can be in prose, then it is called as Yajas. It can be in song, it is called as Sama. And it may also be through rituals, gesticulations, administration of medicines, so on and so forth. It is Atharva. As the word Ruk means it is a song, it is a hymn, and Yajus comes from Yaj Pujane, that means it is used in worship, and Sama means music, and then Atharva means to shiver out of fear, out of something that is terrible. When you preface it with A, it means it removes fear and then the horror. So it is Atharva. Also it is because it is named after a great sage called Atharvangana Maharshi. So this each one of these to remember this corpus of the Veda, there is a short phrase, Rugyajas Sama Tharvanas Chandamsi. So if you remember that phrase, Rugyajas Sama Tharvanas Chandamsi, it's a Vedic mantra. You will immediately recall is Rug, Yajus, Sama, Atharva. They are the Chandamsi. Chandas is also another name to Veda. And each one of the Veda itself is subdivided into 4 parts. The mantras, the mere technical textual part is called Samhita. Then the textual part which is applied in ritual with procedure is called Brahmana. Then there are meditative part called Upasana part of the Vedas, it is called Aranyaka. Then there is the philosophical part and is called as Upanishad. So another way of classifying the entire Veda is also as 2 kinds of functions. One is called Karma Kanda, another is called Jnana Kanda. That is why we also use in the ritual Kandadvaya Upashritaha. That means one who dedicates himself to both the Kandas, that is both Jnana Kanda and Karma Kanda. So coming back to the position of Rudra, among all the Vedas, in the entire Vedic corpus, Rudra is considered as the most sacred. The reason it is called as most sacred is it contains the Panchakshari mantra Namaha Shivaya. And in Namah Shivaya, in that also there is one word of 2 letters called Shiva. And the nature of the text is, it can be used in japa, that means in repetition. It can be used in puja, that means you can take sections of the mantra and use it in the 16th form of the Shodashopachara puja. Or it can be used in abhisheka, or it can also be used as a meditative text like the Aranyaka. Or it can be looked at as an Upanishad because it is also called as Rudropanishad. So the glory of Rudra is it caters to all the varieties of activities, Vedic activities, starting from mere repetition study to the contemplation of the highest philosophy. In fact, it does contain the highest philosophical thought. We will see how to discover that. So it has got 11 paragraphs. Each paragraph is called an Anuvaka because Anuvaka means Anuchyate iti Anuvaka, that means worthy of repetition. So the word Anuvaka means Anuchyate iti, worthy of repetition. So now, before we actually jump into the actual study of the Rudra, we have to establish a methodology for study. It is called Adhyayana Krama. So what is the Adhyayana Krama? the purpose of the study of Shastra, in fact, actually any Shastra, I'm not talking just Vedic Shastra, any Shastra, even if it is physics, mathematics, and sciences, this rule applies. What is the rule? The rule is it must end in the knowledge, in knowledge. This is what in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also said, Sarve samarambhaha jnane parisamapyate. So what is the test for picking up any subject? We must have some idea that it ends in the knowledge of the self. The knowledge of the self is no different from the knowledge of the creation. Because the essence of creation is the essence of self only. So whether you are studying empirical sciences or you are studying the sciences of the soul, in either way it must take us ultimately to the knowledge of the One. Of the One. So the before we take up any study, the following methodology has to be applied. First and foremost, we have got to determine what is known as Anubandha Chatushtaya. Anubandha Chatushtaya means a fourfold examination of the subject matter itself. And that is defined as Adhikari cha Vishayaha Sambandhascha Prayojanam Shastrarambha Phalam Prahuhu Anubandha Chatushtayam. Adhikari, am I competent to study this subject? We are competent to study 100 subjects. But then we should know what is the subject matter for which I am an adhikari. And that is the Vishaya. Then there must be some relationship between the subject matter and me who is about to study. And that is called as Sambandha. And there must be an outcome to that. It is called the Prayojanam. So these four entities have to be examined first. So we determine that I am the adhikari for the study of the Rudra. The Vishaya is of Rudra because I am told that the Rudradhyaya has got the Panchakshara, Namah Shivaya, and I am told that it also contains the beautiful two-lettered concept called Shiva, which is auspicious. And therefore, that Vishaya, subject matter, is of interest to me. And then, the connection is, I am told that the Shiva that Rudradhyaya speaks is no other than myself. And the most interesting subject of all in the creation for me is myself. And therefore, there is the Sambandha. And the outcome is, my ignorance that I am Shiva will be removed. And I will actually assimilate, internalize and understand that I am no other than Shiva. Therefore, there is also a Prayojanam. Then we must also understand how to approach the subject. So what did we determine in this step? We determined that this subject is not only of interest to me, not only it is competent, but there is a benefit for me. So as soon as I have decided, now my interest is awakened to study. Now I have got to examine whether the text has got sevenfold concepts which determine two things. It is called Linga Tatparya. Linga means what is the essence. Because in the study of any subject, we do a lot of digression. We go here and there. In fact, you know that in any subject that we study, we don't stick only to the subject without thinking of other things. So there are digressions, but I have to develop a skill to discover the central thread and then not leave that thread, even though I wander here and there. If you remember the story of the labyrinth, the Greek mythology of labyrinth, you can easily get lost in the labyrinth of the Shastra. But you need that princess. You need that princess who will marry you, and then she will give you that ball of thread, right? And so that you can come back to her. So that princess is none other than Mahadevi. So who is part of that is why Namasomaya is so important. Sa Umaya. So we need the grace of Devi also. So she is the one who will give us the thread, and then take that thread and get into this labyrinth. So our holding on to the thread is linga, and then after that, even though we are wandering here and there and everywhere, but we must also be able to take the epitome or the pith of the entire teaching, and that is called Tatparya. So for us to be able to achieve the linga Tatparya conclusion, the Sanskrit word for conclusion is nirnayam. So now what is the methodology? Second one, it is linga Tatparya nirnaya. So the first one is Anubandha Chatushtaya. Number 2 is Linga Tatparya Nirnaya. For Linga Tatparya Nirnaya, where all do we find that central essence? You start in the beginning. So there is a statement in the very beginning. For example, if any of you have read Jane Austen, she is an expert in this. In the very first sentence, she will make a statement. And then, if you read that statement, you can be sure that in the entire novel, that thread is not lost. The same thing is there in our music also. Musicians who are competent, in the very first time they start the swara, you should be able to recognize what raga it is. Otherwise, that musician is not worth their salt. So there is the upakrama. Upakrama means beginning. There must be a perfect beginning. A perfect beginning must have a perfect end. The perfect end is upasamhara. So we must be able to see the thread in upakrama, in upasamhara. Then thirdly, as we progress through the text, the central theme has got to be repeated in various different ways. When a central theme in a text is repeated, it does not call for our objection that there is a dvirukti dosha. Dvirukti dosha means the flaw of repetition. One of the cardinal principles of effective communication is you never repeat yourself. If you repeat yourself, it must be to reiterate. So there is a difference between repeating yourself and reiterating. So the third important concept you will see in Shastra is reiteration. And reiteration is called abhyasa. So there must be a perfect beginning, upakrama. There must be a perfect ending, upasamhara. Then the third one is there should be abhyasa. Then the fourth thing is the Shastra must be able to tell us something that we do not know. And secondly, there is something that we cannot find out on our own. If there is any knowledge that can be found out on your own, Shastra should not even touch it. Isn't it? That concept is called apurvata. So, upakrama, upasamhara, abhyasa, apurvata, and it must clearly state what is the phalam or what is the benefit out of this. So what is the mandate we looked at? There is a concept called Shiva, and I am not able to find that Shiva. And it is said that Shiva is none other than myself. And repeatedly the text must say that you are Shiva. And ultimately it must show, and then I must know that I am Shiva. I'll give you a clue to that. Ayam me hasto Bhagavan, Ayam me Bhagavattaraha. What does it mean? Now my hand is Bhagavan. Not just Bhagavan. Ayam me, this hand, Bhagavattaraha. It is the highest God. So that conclusion you will get after you have completely assimilated the Rudradhyaya. That means there is the Bhagavan. Then this is not enough. There must be explanatory statements of those things which are inexplicable, and it is called as Arthavada. Arthavada means there must be explanatory statements. So you will see number of explanatory statements here. Namo Hiranyabahave, for example. Then we will also see the ritual Adityatmaka Rudrasya. And then we will now try to connect the two. We will say, in the early morning, at dawn, the golden rays of the sun come out like the arms of Lord Shiva, and then he will take us into himself. So next time you get up in the morning and you see the golden rays, think that it is Shiva's Hiranyabahu that is coming towards you. Or, for example, a statement like Vyomakesha. Vyoma means space. Kesha means hairs. That means the entire splash of sunlight or moonlight in the entire heavens. All of them, you think that each and every one of those strands of light is actually the hairs of Lord Shiva. So that is how we go from the small Alpam to the big Bhuma. This is what the Upanishad also says, Yad Bhuma Tat Sukham Na Alpe Sukham Asti. Only when something is very enormous, when something is universal, there is Sukha. In petty things, there is no Sukha. So the Arthavada explanation here is, one who is meditating on Shiva with proper understanding in his life will never be petty. He will never stoop to low things. And this he will illustrate by means of Upapattischa. Upapatti means Drishtantaha. Drishtanta means examples, anecdotes. All these 7 factors are required for Linga Tatparya Nirnaya, and the shloka goes like this. Upakramopa samharau, upakramopa samharau, abhyasa purvata phalam, arthavadopa pattischa, linga tatparya nirnaye. So now you see, you have now moved on from determining that the text is of interest to me, and also you determine that these 7 qualities are there, these 7 factors are there in the Rudradhyaya. Now we come to the third important stage where our involvement starts. Up to now it is only, we are looking at it from a distance. Now we have got to get involved. This getting involved is of threefold. That means we listen, called Shravana, and then we contemplate on the meaning and assimilation, and every time you do puja, you do japa, you do abhisheka, you do homa, at least on one of the words you must completely get absorbed. Otherwise will be no different from a tape recorder who will be repeatedly playing a CD, and just as the CD will not get any punya, we will also not get any punya. That is why one who doesn't know the meaning and simply chants is no better than a CD player. So therefore, please note that every time we study the Veda mantra, at least one little thing we should contemplate the meaning. That's why the Shastra Vichara portion is going to address that requirement. Then the next thing is called, you have to actually start internalizing. We said this limited individual who feels isolated and small in the universe must slowly become larger and larger than one's life, larger than one's form. Ultimate nididhyasa is becoming one with the universe. So that these are it's called Triyanga. The reason why I use this word Triyanga is to contrast it with Ashtanga. See, the Ashtanga Yoga is a prerequisite, but this Triyanga is the actual involvement in the assimilation of Rudradhyaya itself. Then the fourth important involvement that we have to do is all that we have learned, all that we have assimilated has got to be mapped on. First we have to map this on all the physical entities in the creation. It is called as Adi Bhautika Dhyana. So this is, though it is Tapatriya, it is not Tapatriya because they are not bothering us, we are interacting with them. That's the difference. So that is why we say Namo Taskaraya Cha, for example. We are going to offer a prostration to a thief. A thief is a Adi Bhautika issue. He is a physical issue. Then we will say, Namo, the trees are like golden, having golden hair. So we use many of those Nama Avyadhini Ibhyo Vividhyanti Bhyascha. We will also say Namo Ganebhyaha. Ganebhyaha means a variety of entities in the creation. So you see a tree, you see water, you see a stone, all of those things are Adi Bhautika. So you map your awareness onto Adi Bhautika stage, and this is what we have to do whenever we go for a pilgrimage. When you go on Tirtha Yatra, when you are in a congregation, when you receive prasada, you don't see food there. What you have to see is, you have to see the Lord Shiva himself coming into your being to nourish you. This is the Adi Bhautika mapping. Similarly, you have to do the Adi Daivika mapping. So for the sake of doing Adi Daivika mapping, we do the Anganyasa Karanyasa. Prajanane Brahma Tishtatu, Padayor Vishnu Tishtatu, Hastayor Haras Tishtatu. So every time you are embedding a deity in your body, the whole deity's concept must come into your awareness. You must see physically Vishnu entering into your feet and then embellishing it. In fact, if you can write it in a painting, it will be very beautiful. You can. Lot of sculpture is there. I'll share some of them. I've started creating iconography from various temples of India, which represent the Rudradhyaya mantras, so that your experience will be better. You'll be able to do the Adi Daivika and the Adi Bhautika mapping. So that's why so much of extraordinary iconography was developed. Then finally you have also to map onto Adhyatma mapping. In this Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika mapping, there has to be a process. The process is, in Adi Bhautika mapping, you see every entity as an Archavatara. So what do we mean by Archavatara? You go to the temple, and in the temple you see the Murti in the Garbhagudi. The Murti in the Garbhagudi is a stone. You see the milk that is being poured onto the top of the head, and milk is a liquid. Then you have water that is being poured. It is element water. Then you see the waving of the incense sticks. It is the Vayu Tattva. So now, from the temple we come out. In the Adi Daivika meditation, every stone you see is Lord Shiva. Every water that flows is Lord Shiva's Tirtha. Everywhere you see energy, it is Lord Shiva's Deepa that is being waved around him. This is how we do the Adi Bhautika Dhyana, and Adhyatmika Dhyana is, in water you see Varuna, who is a form of Shiva. In earth, you see Prithvi, which is a form of Prithvi Linga Shiva. That is why we have got the Panchabhuta Linga temples also. So this is why our sages and our forefathers built those kind of temples. So this is how we are getting the Arthavada and Upapatti. How do we get Arthavada and Upapatti? When you visit a specific temple. When you go and visit one of the Panchabhuta's temples, then you will get the Arthavada and Upapatti for your study of the Rudradhyaya. And then you come to the Adhyatma mapping of Rudra study, then you have to contemplate on the Tattva behind it. Behind the diversity and the variety, you see the unity. So from Tattva generates Jnana, and everything culminates in Jnana. Jnane samapyate, parisamapyate. So from Archavatara, which is an Adi Bhautika concept, you go into the Vibhava Avatara, that means the Vaibhava or the grandeur of the deities which form the universe. So you go to that step, and then from there you go to the actual concept of Para, or the highest or the absolute. So this is where I have incorporated Srimad Ramanujacharya's philosophy. That is Archavatara, Vibhavavatara, Vyuha. Vyuha is all the Aniruddha, which is your physical body, Pradyumna, which is your subtle body, then Sankarshana, which is your causal body, and Vasudeva is the element, is the aspect of Srimad Narayana within us. Aniruddha is the wakeful state, Jagrata Avastha, and then Pradyumna is your dream state. Dyumna means where there is light, illumination. So in the illumination of the self you dream, isn't it? Because there is no outside light. Then you will get into the Pradyumna state, then you will get into the Aniruddha. So you will go through the Panchakosha Viveka also as you are doing this kind of study, where you will go from Archavatara, physically worshipping the Linga in a temple, in a group, and then you will start seeing Lord Shiva everywhere, and then you will map all the Devatas onto that, and then from there you will go to the Vibhavavatara, and then you will come to know what is the Para. At that point of time, we will stop talking. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. At that, what is your state of your mind? Anandam brahmano vidvan. So at that point of time, you will be experiencing a state of bhakti. And that state of bhakti is called jnana bhakti. So that is where our study of Rudradhyaya should take us. But we will follow. This much we can do together. Anubandha Chatushtaya, Linga Tatparya Nirnaya, Shravana Manana Nididhyasa, mapping of Adibhautika, Adhyatmika, Adidaivika. But from that point of time, it is the individual effort. We'll do the Shanti Mantra.